Hi everyone, welcome to the latest in our Bogtastic webcast series from Moors for the Future Partnership. Thank you very much for enjoying us all today. Sorry for joining us all today. We hope you enjoy. So obviously we're running these webcasts in lieu of the fact that we are unable to carry out our usual Bogtastic engagement activities. So it's part of our More Life 2020 project, which is funded by the EU Life Programme, Yorkshire Water, United Utilities and Severn Trent. Just on a technical note, if anybody loses the video, if you refresh your page, hopefully that should solve the problem. But do let us know if that doesn't do so. We'll see what we can do about it. So today I'm joined by Phil Stratton. He is a Senior Conservation Officer at Moors for the Future Partnership, and he's worked with us for about 10 years, and he'll be talking about bare peat restoration for around 25 minutes. We'll have a Q&A at the end, so please do post your questions in the chat bar if you're watching live, and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end. There'll be a couple of handouts appearing as we go along. They'll open in a separate tab. And we also have a couple of polls for you to take part in as well. So Phil, you're going to take us through the process of the first steps of restoring bare peat.
All right, thank you, Charlie. As Charlie says, I'm going to take you through the processes and some of the challenges of the first steps in restoring bare peat. The first process in restoring bare peat back to a functioning moorland is to apply heather brash, lime, seed and fertiliser to re-establish vegetation cover on the ground. This starts with surveying. The initial surveys are done on desktop using computer mapping software and aerial imagery. This involves visually identifying all the bare peat on the site and then mapping it. An experienced eye is invaluable here to distinguish the bare peat from other types of ground. These initial maps give us initial estimates of the areas of bare peat and the quantity of materials that we need to restore it. Once this mapping is complete, we then conduct field surveys to confirm the desktop analysis and estimated quantities. This involves taking the maps out into the field and checking that the areas identified are actually bare peat and refining the estimates of quantities. We also check the site for anything else that needs to be taken into consideration. Once these maps and quantities are confirmed, tenders are issued for the supply of heather brash, airlifting, spreading, and lime seed and fertiliser. The supply of heather brash comes from other healthy moors. These will be identified by the contractor in their tender. Once the tenders are received, we conduct surveys of the proposed cutting sites. We call them donor sites. We check the donor sites for many things, including transferable pests and diseases such as Phytophthora, which is a fungal disease on bilberry, heather beetle on heather, invasive species such as birch or rhododendron, sensitive areas of the moor to void, and archaeology. In the left-hand picture, you can see a healthy bank there of bilberry that we've surveyed. And also, if you look closely at that picture in the top left-hand corner, you can see the straight line of bilberry running through the heather. That's actually an archaeological feature, which is known as a holloway. It's an old pack horse route, an old transport route across the moors. So archaeology isn't always necessarily a big stone monument sticking above the ground. On the right there is my colleague Paul, conducting a heather beetle survey in heather. Once the donor sites have passed all their checks, we'll then contract the cutting. The heather cutting is a large-scale operation. Last year in the season 1920, we cut 5,500 bags of heather. That's a fairly typical year for us. We have done as many as 17,000 in a single year. Each bag is a standard 1-ton bag measuring 90 by 90 by 90 centimetres, and when full of brash weighs between 100 and 150 kilos. Depending on the operator, we can cut between 1 and 400 bags per day. So the 5,500 bags we cut last year is equal to approximately 8.25 tons of heather and 27.5 hectares of cutting. All of our operations take place outside the bird nesting season, which runs from 1st of April to 1st of August. So generally the cutting operation takes place from late August through to November, although sometimes we will cut later into the year. We also usually require SSSI consent to cut, as well as permission of landowners and other stakeholders. Some of the challenges involved in cutting the heather can simply be finding a heather moor where we can get access for such large vehicles. Sometimes the ground is simply too wet to take vehicles onto. And of course, sometimes there's 3 feet of snow covering everything. Different contractors do use different types of harvester. The one in the picture on the left is a collection type harvester, which flails the heather and collects it in the hopper. When that hopper is full, a second tractor will come with empty bags on a frame to collect the brash, as you can see in the top right picture. And in picture 3, there is a stockpile of the brash ready for transporting. The other main type of harvester used is a forage harvester, which blows the heather straight into the empty bags, as you can see in this video. So that tractor has dual wheels on, and the vehicle behind it is tractor vehicle collecting the brash. You can see it's
Phil, can I ask, are there any benefits to the moor that you cut the heather from?
Yes, there's multiple benefits. So it helps with diversity, where we can break up a sort of anomalous sward of heather and break it up, and we'll get different plants coming back. It also helps provide sort of fire breaks as well. The cutting is often done in conjunction with the landowners who like to break the heather up for traditional moorland management.
Great, thanks.
The next stage is airlifting. We use helicopters because they're the only way to transport the quantity of material to the top of the moors. We use a number of different types of helicopters, and each of them has different capabilities. The picture on the left-hand side is a Bell 205 that has a carrying capacity of 1.2 tons. The one in the middle is a Squirrel, and it can carry around 950 kilos, and the one on the right is a Hughes 500, and that can carry about 500 kilos. The larger machines can carry more, which is good for large areas of bare peat, where we're shifting large bulk of material, but they're a little slower and they cannot be as accurate with the bag drops. Generally, the smaller the machine, the faster it is through the air and the more accurate it can be with its drops, which is better for smaller, patchier areas of peat. Finding a suitable lift site for helicopters to operate from can be a challenge. Ideally, a lift site will have good vehicle access for deliveries, be large and flat for the helicopter to take off and land, and be close to the work site to minimise carrier distances. That's few and far between in the Peak District. And indeed, on the work site itself at the top, it can be a real challenge simply to find a spot large enough to land a helicopter on. There are other general difficulties that can come with conducting an airlift operation, such as air traffic control. Some of our sites actually fall within Manchester's air traffic control zone. We sometimes get other aircraft coming into the zone we're operating in, and often there are people in the work site where we're working, as it's all open access. And of course, the weather has a big impact. It is amazing what weather will keep a helicopter on the ground. There are limits to how strong a wind we can fly in. If it's foggy or low cloud, we can't fly. If it's raining or snowing, we can't fly. If there's too much snow on the ground, we can't see where to put the bags. And on the very few low wind, dry, clear, bright days we do have, the pilots complain they can't see with the sun in their eyes. For an average airlift operation, we can do approximately 50 flights a day, depending on the materials and the distances involved. Therefore, a sort of average number of bags a day is 200 to 500, depending on the helicopter. Now, a good day's airlifting might look something like this. So we arrive in the morning, there'll be a bit of a daily debrief, and then they'll take off and start lifting bags. Each cycle of bags there takes about 6 minutes from the helicopter taking off. And you can see the only time it stops is for lunch. On top of the hill, there's a team receiving bags. They'll also collect strops to send them back. They'll cover a lot of ground in the day, and they'll be quite fit by the end of the job. Okay. Once the brash is on top of the hill, we use it to provide a stabilizing layer. It retains a bit of moisture and provides a microhabitat for seeding and establishment of nurse crops. It also brings some heather seed and mosses in with it. Contractors walk onto the site and hand spread the brash onto the bare peat. They're aiming to achieve an even, thin layer forming a lattice work of brash, something sort of that you can see through a little bit. This lattice work is important as it allows the seed to fall through and actually get contact with the soil. As an average, contractors spread something like 20 to 25 bags per person per day, and we estimate one bag of brash should cover around about 49 square metres, so we can cover approximately 1,000 square metres per person per day. As with all our operations, the weather can cause difficulty. Obviously, if it's too foggy or it's snowing, people can't be safe on the hill and won't go out. And even frozen bags, sometimes the bags turn into a cubic metre ice cube, and then they're just solid until they defrost. Once the brash has been spread, the empty bags are all gathered on the hill to be airlifted off. So you can see in the top left picture there a large group of empty bags that have been brought together. We ask for them to be brought together and tied up really well because they may be sat up there for a little while and we do not want the wind to get hold of them and blow them all over the hill. In the bottom middle there, my colleague Katie's signalling to the helicopter. She's ready to hook on a load, and there's Katie receiving the load and hooking it on. There are difficulties with lifting the empty bags by helicopter because they're a relatively lightweight. A load may only be 100 or 200 kilos. That means that it swings around a lot more, and because they're bags, they also have a parachuting effect, and they fill up with air and they swing around some more. Both of these things mean the helicopter has to fly much, much more slowly and can only do the operation when the winds are light enough. Ideally, that needs to be below 15 miles an hour. So as you can imagine, our days are limited when we can actually do that. Once these bags have been airlifted down to the drop point, they'll be collected from there by a contractor, baled up, and then they're all sent for recycling.
I can see Katie under the helicopter there. So I have to ask you, Phil, do you prefer to do what Katie's doing there and be under the helicopter, or do you prefer to be in a helicopter?
It's probably a little 50-50. I do enjoy running around under the helicopter. It is good fun, but I can't deny the pleasures of flight home either.
Understandable.
Okay. So the last sort of step in the initial phase of restoring bare peat is to apply lime seed and fertiliser. The purpose of applying these materials is to reduce the pH of the soil, as it's often as acidic as light lemon juice, and so most seeds won't germinate very well in that. The seed mix provides us with a nurse crop which stabilises the soil and the fertiliser assists in the growth of that nurse crop. The sort of rates that we apply this material at are a tonne of lime per hectare and 600 kilogram of fertiliser per hectare and 50 kilograms of seed per hectare. Now, the seed mix that we use as the nurse crop mix contains 3 varieties of amenity grasses, which is perennial ryegrasses, fescues and bent grasses. These are not native to the moorland, but they are used as they provide quick growth of root mass, which is what holds the soil together to allow the slower growing natives a chance to establish. Annual vegetation surveys conducted by our science team do show that the agricultural grasses do die off after about 5 years after the final application of lime and fertiliser. Alongside those 3 varieties of amenity grass, we add these moorland species, wavy hairgrass, ling heather and cross-leaved heath. Again, this is a very large scale operation. So the picture on the left, you can see materials being delivered to the lift site. Each of the bags on the trailer weighs in at about 600 kilograms. And on that particular side, I think we had about 90 tons of material to apply. The second picture in the middle is of the helicopter being loaded up, ready to go. So they're using a specialist loader there, which weighs out the correct amount to put into the hopper so that the helicopter can lift it. And then the last one on the right-hand side is a picture of the helicopter actually applying it. And if you look closely, you can actually see the fertiliser coming out of the hopper underneath there.
The application rate that you mentioned and the 1 tonne of lime per hectare, does that ever change according to the site?
So we don't generally change the lime application rates, but the fertiliser application rates do change sometimes. We conduct soil samples to see what's in the soil and how acidic and so on it is to inform whether we need to change that or not. But generally it stays pretty constant. Okay. So I've gone through that a little quicker than I anticipated, actually. That's broadly speaking the initial process of heather, brash, and lime seed and fertiliser. But alongside that, other restoration techniques are carried out, and the work on these moors has fantastic results. So these images are of Kinder North Edge, and the first one is from 2009. And you can see large areas of dark brown bare peat from the degraded moorland. This is just before I started working for moors. 2010 was my first job. So you're starting to see the results here in 2013. You can see the large rectangular green area in the middle is the results from the job we started in 2010. By 2008, the results of many years of restoration across the whole plateau is the sharp eye down there, we didn't miss that bit at the right hand side of the picture. We did leave that as a control area for monitoring purposes. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this webcast.
Thanks very much, Phil. Shall we have a look if we have any questions? Just to mention that there is hopefully a poll popping up to ask what topics you in the audience would like to find out more about in future webcasts. So whilst we're doing the Q&A with Phil, please do cast your vote if you're watching live. It'd be really interesting to know what everybody thinks. So let's have a look at some of the questions that have come in. So we've got a question from Alice that says, how many people would be involved collecting the empty bags in the cleanup stage?
In the airlift operation, it's probably limited to the number of people who can get in the helicopter, actually. So usually it's a team of 3 who then have quite a lot of running to do to get from one pile of bags to the next in time for the helicopter to pick them up. Must
be very fit, but like you say, by the end of the day, very tired.
Fit or broken, one of the
two. Thanks, Phil. We've got a question from Taco. How is heather brash mounted to sloping bare areas?
So we've done quite a lot of work around slopes, and certainly up to sort of 45, 50 degrees, you just chuck it on and it sticks by itself. It doesn't really come off. Once you start getting a bit steeper than 50 degrees, it's tricky. We don't try to pin it down by any means. We use other techniques to deal with the very steep slopes, such as reprofiling or sometimes geotextiles. But we would just put the brash down on the ground and leave it to its own devices otherwise.
Can you just explain what reprofiling is for those of us who aren't too sure?
Sure. So if you've got a very steep slope, and you want it to be a shallower slope so you can put things on it, then we would use an excavator to break that slope and reshape it, and that's reprofiling.
So we've got a question from Helen. It says, is the forage harvester the same as what is used for silage, or is it adapted?
It will be the same as is used for silage. It may have bigger flail teeth on it, but that would be the only main difference.
We've got a question from Alice. What kind of area would a bag of brash cover?
So we work on a basis of a bag of brash would cover 49 square metres, sort of a 7 by 7 metre square.
Okay, thanks very much.
Obviously, that's on pure flat ground where the maths works out. On the moors, it's, because of the nature of the 3D nature of the ground, it varies a bit.
Thanks, Phil. And I have a question as well of what is your favourite part of the process you've talked about, from the surveying to finishing?
Probably actually running around collecting the empty bags. That's a good fun day out. But I think perhaps the most satisfying bit is to be able to look back at like the aerial imagery I showed you at the very end there to see the results of your work. It's nice being able to go back onto Kinder and not being able to remember how much black bare peat I could see when I stood up there in 2010.
Yeah, that must be a lovely feeling. Right, well, that is all the questions. So thanks very much to everybody who. Oh, we've got another question come in at the last minute. What area of bare peat has been restored by Moors for the Future, and how much is left to restore?
So from memory, I think Moors for the Future has, over its lifetime, restored 33 square kilometres of bare peat. How much is there left to restore? Still significant amount. I don't have exact numbers, but we know there is still quite a bit in the Peak District in the South Pennines, and further north the Western Pennines, and there are sister organisations doing the same up into the Yorkshire Dales and further north up to North Pennines.
Okay. Still plenty more to be getting on with then.
There is, yeah.
Great. Well, I think that is all the questions then. And thanks to everyone who has voted in the polls as well. Quite a lot of people have seen helicopters carrying bags of heather brash on the moors. So that's quite exciting. And thanks to everyone who has also voted in what topics they would like to hear more about in future webcasts. Hope you all enjoyed. Oh, we've got a last minute question. If we got time for one more, I was just about to round it up, but we've got one more question from Taco. Okay, are project insights from the current projects used elsewhere? Does Moors for the Future teach other practitioners about their successes?
Yes, we share knowledge and information widely, and we speak plenty to other projects, as much to learn from them as to share our knowledge, certainly. But we work closely with the organisations sort of further north in the Yorkshire Pennine area.
Thank you very much. I'll stop teasing you now that the quizzical portion of the talk is over. It is actually over now. So thank you everyone for your questions, and thank you, Phil, for taking time to tell us about the bare peat restoration. It was really interesting. I hope you all enjoyed it at home, and do listen again on our website if you get the opportunity to. So thanks very much, everybody, and we'll hopefully see you next week for Tia's talk on the science of growing sphagnum. And Tia is one of our senior conservation senior research and monitoring officers. So do tune in at 3 o'clock for that. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.